So we're only a few days away from the start of Season 1 for the War Within, and because this first season of this expansion is going to work a bit differently than it did in previous expansions, there's going to be a lot of ways you can optimize right now going into Season 1. So that's what I wanted to go over in this video. And the tips I'm going over in this video aren't going to be super complex. There's not going to be some detailed roadmap of exactly what you need to hit this breakpoints or anything like that. These are much more simple things you can do to get ready for the season right now that's just going to allow you to get a bit of a head start when starting into Season 1, which will just allow you to more easily transition into the new content. So before we get into any of these tips, we have to go over how Season 1 is actually going to work because it's split up into 2 different weeks and it has a bit of funky rules with it. So on September 10th, Season 1 will start and we'll be getting the first raid, Narubar Palace, and we will be getting this raid on normal and heroic difficulty, and we'll be getting LFR Wing 1. No Mythic in week 1. Then for dungeons, we'll be getting Mythic 0 difficulty dungeons, and remember, Mythic 0 in our new dungeon system is what Mythic 10s would have been back in Dragonflight. Then for delves, all of the additional difficulty tiers will be unlocked, so we'll be unlocking 4 through 11 difficulties. We'll also be getting a new seasonal delve. Then for PvP, you'll basically just be getting everything. So the new arena and battleground season will start, and we'll be getting solo queue rated battlegrounds. Then on the next week of September 17th, we'll be getting the mythic difficulty of the raid, the story mode of the raid, which I don't think gives any gear, and then LFR Wing 2 of the raid. Then we'll be getting the Mythic Plus seasons, so every tier of Mythic Plus, and the Great Vault will also open, and that's also pretty important because at the start of Season 1 on September 10th, the content you do will fill up your vault that you can then open on September 17th. But that's not all, because dungeons are going to work quite a bit differently than they did in previous expansions. So on September 10th, we're going to be getting Mythic 0, which again are like Mythic 10s from Dragonflight, but we're also going to be getting the Season 1 version of Heroic Dungeons. And this is where it's going to get a bit odd because currently we have the pre-season version of Heroic Dungeons. And the pre-season version is giving 571 pieces of gear on the adventure track. The Season 1 version of Heroic Dungeons are going to be giving 580 pieces of gear, but both the Season 1 version of Heroic Dungeons and Mythic 0 dungeons are going to be on the Season 1 Mythic Plus dungeon rotation. So you're not going to be running all 8 of the War Within dungeons. You're going to be running 4 of the War Within dungeons and 4 dungeons from other expansions. And these dungeons are going to be Arakara, City of Echoes, City of Threads, the Dawnbreaker, the Stone Vault, Mists of Tyrannus Scythe, the Necrotic Wake, Siege of Borealis, and the new remade Grim Batal. And another change on top of all of this is that Mythic 0 dungeons are going to be on a daily lockouts per character. And Mythic 0 dungeons are going to be giving 593 item level gear. So if you've been gearing up any character up to this point, you're still pretty much going to be skipping Heroic Dungeons and just going into Mythic 0s. And you're going to have 8 dungeons to run per day on all of those characters. So you really won't have to worry about running heroics at that point. Now, in this first week of Season 1, delves are actually going to be the main content for the majority of people, because once you get up to difficulty 8, which is the highest difficulty that gives you higher item level of gear, you're going to get item level 603 gear when using coffer keys, which is going to be better than any Mythic 0 dungeons, and it's going to be better than the majority of the heroic raid. I think it's only once you get to more of the end bosses that you can start to get higher item level than just bountiful delve rewards. And that's not even the Great Vault rewards. That's just the reward you get when using your coffer key. And that's going to play in pretty heavily to one of the tips. And that brings us into the tips, and there's only going to be a few of these, but they're going to be very useful for going into Season 1. And the first one is really simple and self-explanatory, but I think it's something that a lot of people have not followed through with. And that's to go get a full set of 571 item level gear. So from heroics or from going around killing all of the rares. And this gear is going to be on the adventurer track, and then to go take that gear and to upgrade it. Because upgrading gear from 571 all the way through the adventurer track, so going up to rank 8, only takes Valor Stones and Weathered Harbinger crests. And that will bring all of that gear up to 593 item level, which will mean you're quite strong for starting the first week of Season 1. And you don't really have to worry about wasting any of these resources because Valor Stones are infinitely farmable, and even though these crests are capped on a weekly basis, Weathered Harbinger crests aren't going to be used past that point. If you get gear past the adventurer track, so on the veteran track, you're going to be using the next level of crests. So you don't have to worry about wasting Weathered Harbinger crests. You're not really gonna be using them past the point of upgrading your adventurer gear. So you want to use all those resources to get your gear up to a higher item level so you can go into Season 1 as strong as possible. And as a side note, you're also not wasting crests because if you upgrade a piece in a slot, you won't have to ever use crests to upgrade another piece up to that point. So let's say you get a 571 helm and you upgrade it to rank 8, so now it's 593. If you get any other helms in the adventurer track, it'll only take Valor Stones to get up to that rank 8. So you're never really wasting crests. Now, farming the resources to upgrade all of this gear can be quite efficient if you know what you're doing. So first off, your Weathered Harbinger crests. These are very easy to get depending on what day it is. Because every day in one of the zones, you will see all of those floating orbs you can go fly through. If you're level 80, when you fly through one of those, you will get 1 to 2 Weathered Harbinger crests. Now, the best time to do this is when these orbs are spawning in Hollowfall, because for whatever reason in Hollowfall, there's like 10 times more orbs. Sometimes you'll just find rows of these orbs, so it's significantly faster to do it when it's in Hollowfall, but it's still pretty quick to cap out your crests when these orbs are spawning in any zone. Now this week we have a cap of 270 Weathered Harbinger crests, and on top of that there are some ways to get more of these crests that don't count towards that cap, but those primarily come from one-time sources. So I think the main thing you want to do is just to make sure to get to that weekly cap of 270. Just go turn on some YouTube or some Netflix and go fly around, pick up all these orbs until you're capped. Now, the second resource you need is Valor Stones, and this is a lot more interesting because Valor Stones aren't just going to be used in this upgrade. Valor Stones are going to be used in every upgrade, no matter how high eye level that piece of gear is, no matter what upgrade track it's on, they're all going to be using Valor Stones as well. So we're not only going to go over how to get a bunch of Valor Stones right now, but using this method, you can save up a ton of additional Valor Stones because you can only have 2,000 actual Valor Stones at a time. And the main way you're going to be farming this is Disturbed Earth. So once you get to Renown 2 with the Ringing Deeps, Disturbed Earth will start to spawn everywhere. You can go into your settings and make sure you have outline mode on. This will give all of these piles of dirt a purple outline so they're much easier to see. You go click on it, it'll spawn some random event, whether it's to pick up a pile of wax or to fly through a bunch of floating piles of wax or to kill an enemy or defend a loot bag against kobolds. Whatever event spawns will give you some amount of Valor Stones. It's usually 1 to 3, but some of the events can get even more. But one of the main things you're looking for is a resource you'll also get from completing any of these, and these are odd globs of wax. Now, if you go to the main city in the Ringing Deeps, you can turn in 5 odd globs of wax, and this will fill up a meter at this NPC. You'll get 10% for the 5 globs of wax, and that will give you 10 Valor Stones. So that means every odd glob of wax gives you 2 Valor Stones. Now, I've previously gone over a video that goes over this farm in more depth because this is the best Valor farm in the game, and on average, you'll be getting around 700 Valor Stones an hour. So in a couple of hours, you can cap out your Valor Stones. But because you're turning in these globs of wax for the Valor Stones, that means once you're capped, you can just save tons of these globs of wax in your inventory. And once you use Valor Stones, when Season 1 starts, you can just turn more in for more Valor Stones. Now, these globs of wax stack to 999, and I'm not sure if you can carry multiple stacks. I've never gotten up to that point, but even if you can only carry 999, that is basically carrying a second cap of Valor Stones. So if you really want to get to farming these, you can have at least 2 caps of Valor Stones going into Season 1, which should be enough Valor Stones to upgrade a good chunk of your gear through entire upgrade tracks. And if you have that much Valor Stones, you're probably not going to be limited on Valor Stones for at least the first week of Season 1. And the final tip is going to revolve around delves. As mentioned, all difficulties of delves are going to release on September 10th at the start of Season 1. And as mentioned, once you get to the highest difficulty that gives you better gear, which is difficulty 8, you're going to be able to get 603 item level gear when using a coffer key in a bountiful delve. And on top of that, this will also be able to give you a 616 piece of gear in your Great Vault. But as you may have realized, you have to use a coffer key for these 603 pieces of gear. So very simply, that's the tip. Save up all of your coffer keys. And this has been pretty widespread throughout the community. I've heard this pretty much everywhere, to save up your coffer keys for the start of Season 1, because getting any coffer key can be used on any difficulty of delves. So if you've been using coffer keys on difficulty 3, you'd only be getting 571 pieces of gear that you could just go get from spam running heroics. But if you save all of them, use them on difficulty 8, you're now getting a 603 piece of gear, which is some of the highest gear you can get until Mythic Raids and Mythic Plus. Only once you get to the later portions of the heroic raid will you start to get this high item level of gear. And there's really only 2 ways to get coffer keys: doing any of the weekly activities in the open world, or doing any of the world quests that have coffer key fragments as a reward. And there's only been a handful of world quests since the launch that have actually given coffer keys. I think now you could have gotten that have given coffer key fragments. I think now you could have gotten 1 additional coffer key doing all of the world quests that have popped up that give fragments. But besides that, doing any of the weekly activities, you could have gotten 4 coffer keys per week. So that's any of the weekly quests that you pick up in Dornegal. That's the special operation missions in any of the zones where you have to complete 3 world quests. Then you do that end objective. That'll give you a box that'll give you a coffer key, or doing any of the open world events like the theater event. All of those basically give the same rewards, where the first 4 of those weekly rewards you get will always give you a coffer key. Now, if you haven't been saving up coffer keys, it's not really that big of a deal, but I would definitely make sure to go do your 4 weeklies right now to get at least your 4 coffer keys. Now, keep in mind that this doesn't mean you'll be able to easily go do Delve Tier 8 right at the launch of Season 1. I would actually recommend on September 10th, when Season 1 starts, to actually go do all of your daily Mythic Zeros first to give you a bit of additional gear, and then go start your climb to Tier 8 of the delves, because they are actually going to be difficult in the gear we have, and even in getting some additional gear, they're still going to be difficult. So I think getting some gear first, then going into those delves is going to be best. But that's pretty much all I want to go over. Using these handful of very simple tips will give you a very good start going into Season 1. You'll be able to jump into your Mythic Zeros, having pretty good gear for those, to get a decent bit of gear. Then you'll be able to jump into your delves to get up to Tier 8, to then use your saved up coffer keys to then get some 603 gear, and then you'll hopefully have a bunch of saved up Valor Stones to be able to start upgrading all of your new gear. But that's pretty much all I'm going to go over, so thanks for watching.